Hi, I'm Matt Hernandez, and this is Book Chat with You. In most episodes, I try to have this be a conversation about literature with you. I'd like to still discuss this with you, but today we're looking at the Sensational Spider-Man 38 and 39. Now, with these two issues, it is the slow lead up to Back in Black, this is Back in Black, to Brand New Day, which I might not get to Brand New Day before the movie Brand New Day comes out. So I will do the best that I can in that. Now, so there was three sets of Back in Black. The main ones, which originally were the only ones I had, were the Amazing Spider-Man issues. Now this one is the Sensational Spider-Man, and this story is centers around Eddie Brock. So, at this moment, I'm only recording this on my face. If I end up editing this for video, which I may or may not, then I will also try to show the pages on the screen as well. And as I go over this, I'll also go over the ads as well, because the ads in these are so much fun. So here on the cover, we see Spider-Man. He's on a tombstone. It says, "Here lies Eddie Brock." Doesn't say the dates or anything, just says, "Here lies Eddie Brock." Now, on the following page, it says, "Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer." Oh, I'd always kind of forgot about that movie. Did that movie get as much attention as the first one? So we see an ad for the comic, or for the game, for the tie-in video game. Then I'm looking at the actual panels of the comic now. We see J. Jonah Jameson. He's giving a speech, and he's giving a speech to journalist students. Amongst them, it looks like Eddie Brock is in the crowd, well, as a student. So this would have been like a flashback many years prior. And amongst these, I see J. Jonah Jameson says, "Every story can be boiled down to this essence. A man is born, he dies, and he lives. But the details, ladies and gentlemen, what happens between those three immutable events, though the who, what, where, why, and how you unearth, and why you write about, are what will distinguish you as journalists." That line has always stuck to me for years, for many, many years. Oh yes, and probably what I should say now, which I should have said from the offset, is that these two comics are not for children. A little surprising. I'm trying to lead up to a Disney movie, which is for all ages, I assume, but this one is not. These two issues are not for children. Probably the entirety of Back in Black, but definitely these two issues. It says, "I was 22 back then." So if you look at the panels of this one, the boxes, the little thought boxes from Eddie Brock are in black with white text inside of it, which is supposed to kind of symbolize how he feels that darkness from the symbiote. Now, so in this comic book, he has cancer, and it says, "I was happy. But before, well, like the dealer says, pick a card, any card." And Eddie Brock here is suffering from cancer, and he no longer has the symbiote. And on the bottom left panel, we see him praying in a church, and the symbiote goes and takes him. Now, I'm not sure I've ever read those issues, but if you've looked at the 1994 Spider-Man animated series, we can remember that moment when Peter Parker gets rid of the symbiote, and then the symbiote goes on to Eddie Brock. So we see Eddie Brock on the ground, the symbiote's taking him, and this codependent villain called Venom. Then he shows an auction when he got rid of this symbiote. This exposition I kind of need because I never read those issues. So then Eddie Brock is in this hospital, kind of roaming about. Now we see kind of this sickly symbiote that's kind of all thin. And it's, of course, only in his mind, as far as we know. I mean, I guess there's a slight retcon to this way later, where there becomes an anti-venom. Eddie Brock becomes something of an anti-villain. We get an ad for Got Milk. Then, on the next page, we see Eddie Brock lying in a hospital bed, and he's sort of imagining this symbiote. Still, we see him imagining here. He's at something of the hospital break room. He's in a pool. He's in an elevator. And no matter where he goes, the symbiote is always following him. Then he's in the hospital bed. He looks at the TV, and Spider-Man takes off his mask for everybody to see that he is Peter Parker, and he has been Spider-Man since he was 15 years old. So this issue is even taking place even before or even during the Civil War comic book event, the Marvel comic book event. So as Eddie Brock roams about, he sees that Spider-Man's or Peter Parker's Aunt May is in the hospital with Mary Jane. And, the symbiote, or at least his perception of it, starts to screw with his head. We see Mary Jane in there. She has her own panel, and she feels guilty that she was pushed out of the way of the bullet that flew towards Aunt May. Now, here's an ad, Fantastic Four, World's Greatest Heroes. I imagine that this cartoon that I never heard of before has probably no connection to the movies, but they just kind of timed it, kind of rode off each other's coattails. So then we see Mary Jane again, and she's feeling guilty and all that. She gets her own panels here, which in a way, this is really an Eddie Brock comic. So we get a moment where there's a bit of crime fighting. And I feel that the only reason why, as we see Spider-Man web slinging about in his black costume, we see him beat up some criminals. Then, next page, we see an ad for a Nintendo DS video game. It seems to be a Hulk game, but there's a lot going on here because they're advertising the Hulk comic along with ballpark hot dogs and some kind of Nintendo DS game all at once. There's kind of a lot going on with this 2-page, 3-ad thing going on. I don't know. I like to go on these websites, see if they still exist. myhunger.com. Okay. Then, on the next page, we see Spider-Man brutally beat up these thugs. Then, on this next page, cakes.com. So, for people to order birthday cakes with the Spider-Man 3, the Spider-Man 3 movie theme on these. Now, there was a long while in these ads that these were like really for people from New York. I would wonder, around this time, around May 4th, 2007, could you have ordered these cakes for most major cities in the US? I'd be a little curious. And on these cakes, it's kind of funny. So you could put a little picture of Spider-Man, Sandman, or Venom on it. And even on this comic, the pictures of Venom that you'd put on it don't look that good because I guess it's just a reprint from the movies. So this woman asks, "You just saved me, but are you going to ask me how I am?" And Spider-Man replies, "You call the police." And she says, "Is that it?" He goes, "What do you want me to do? What do you want me to say?" So, there's a bit less candor from Spider-Man than there often would be to say, "Are you okay? Do you need assistance?" Making a joke. Now we see some kind of robot Spider-Man dog toys. I wonder how well these things fare compared to modern times. They're called spy dogs, and that'd be quite interesting to have. Still, Spider-Man's here. He's saying he apologizes for not being more helpful. Then Spider-Man web slings into an apartment on a tall high-rise. Amongst it says, "But no, she left one open for me, just like last time. One of the advantages, I guess, of being a clairvoyant. No such thing as an unexpected guest dropping in. Hello, Madam Web." You never see that many comics with Madam Web. And I only imagine Spider-Man only goes up to her when he needs her help. And what's with this? Madam Web. So is she only going to be involved in Spider-Man issues and comics and all that? Okay. Another ad, a Marvel in metal, some kind of a figurine. Now, you'd be surprised, but in China, these kinds of figurines seem to be quite popular because you could find quite a few stores that just sell these figurines. Not even action figures, just figurines. And frankly, I cannot imagine at my age buying some of these and kind of, I don't know, maybe like one or two. I've thought about one or two from Dragon Ball. So on the next page, Spider-Man speaking to Madam Web. And if you were to look here, the thought boxes for Spider-Man are a different color. it's like a gradient. It starts with white on top, and then as it goes down, it turns into more of a sky blue on the bottom with black text inside, which kind of shows us the thought process between Venom and Spider-Man. Eddie Brock, his mind is quite dark, and Spider-Man, well, it's not just the white boxes. I mean, there's a bit more going on in Spider-Man's mind at the moment. So Spider-Man says, that's why I want you to perform, I guess you'd call it a seance. And Madam Web replies, oh, your aunt isn't dead yet, Spider-Man. What good will a seance do? So, Spider-Man is first coming up to her for this help. And later, he will come up to her for a different kind of help. But for now, it's kind of asking for a seance. She says, what you're asking me to do, such a thing is possible depending on, tell me anything. No, Spider-Man, nothing to do with you. It depends on where your aunt is and whether or not she wants to be reached. Okay, I'm turning the page, and now we see Eddie Brock again. On this left panel, we see the hospital, and then on the right, we see, still on the left page, we see 4 panels on top of each other. Well, actually 5 panels, and Eddie Brock is in a knelt position as if he's going to pray, but he's not praying. He's sort of, he's in anguish, and this Venom, which in a retcon, Venom's still kind of in him, but at least right now we can assume Venom is not in him, and it's just his own sanity leaving him. And Eddie Brock wants him to do something very, very bad. Does it state directly in this? So Venom says, or the symbiote says, no buts, Eddie. You've been handed an opportunity here to make your little paltry life count for something. I'm not going to let you waste that because you don't have the necessary guts. Okay, next page. And then we see toys for Spider-Man 3. Well, not exactly toys. We see like a kid's chair, a little kind of mug, pillows, some kind of costume thing, some kind of a raincoat, blanket, children's bedding. And yet, when you look at this comic, it's not so much for kids. It's not. So, then on the next page, the symbiote kind of has a package. And when Eddie Brock opens it, it's just a black Venom costume. But, just like a regular polyester costume. It is not the symbiote anything. It's not. Because the symbiote is its own kind of life form, own being. So Eddie Brock reluctantly puts this on. Turn to the next page. It shows a cover of the next issue. And then we see an ad for macaroni and cheese, which is all quite amusing. And they're all pushing this Spider-Man 3 in theaters May 4th. Then on the back page, some other kind of Spider-Man toy. Fast spinning action? I'm not even sure what this is. I'm looking at this picture. I cannot tell you what this is, but it's some kind of toy in the back by Think Away Toys. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I thought I would have had time to go over 2 issues rather than 1. Maybe on another day at another time, I would have time to go over 2 issues rather than 1, but I don't exactly have the time now. And the next issue is much more dark, and I'll hope to do the next issue tomorrow morning. So, thank you very much, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.